I'm Bill Snodgrass, and in this Photoshop tutorial video we're going to look at one of the built-in filters in Photoshop that will do so much so fast that it's just you just cannot overlook this. It is the camera raw filter, and this is not necessarily to be used with raw files, but rather with anything that you've already loaded into the Photoshop format. So just to get started, we're going to go very quickly. Not going to take a lot of time, but we're going to look at some of the main features and how to use them to improve your photographs. So we're starting with a photo that I've already cropped into an 8x10 format. So it's already in an 8x10 format. I'm just going to go up to Filter, Camera Raw Filter, and it's going to pull up the interface. I've got a zoom tool, and you can also set your zoom down here in the corner by picking whatever size you want, or plussing and minusing. So I'm going with fit in view because I kind of want to get the overall look. It comes up on this basic editor, and you have all of these options that you can work through and change the way the photo looks. White balance, you can automatically set white balance, or you can use it as shot. It's worth giving auto a chance to see what it comes up with, to see if you like that or not, or you can go back to as shot. As soon as you start moving the sliders around, it's going to go to custom. Most people are familiar with the temperature concept. Moving to the cooler side is going to introduce blues, and moving to the warmer side is going to introduce the reds. I am going to come back to that later in the process. First, I'm going to look at exposure, and I feel like this is close to what I wanted, but maybe just a little bit too bright. So before I start messing with exposure, I'm going to go down to blacks and shadows. One of my personal preferences is I like vivid, dark shadows and blacks. And working through those, I'm down in pretty far down, but still feeling like it's a little on the bright side. So I'm going to go back to 0 on those, and then I'm going to drop this down. Now exposure is very sensitive. If you just drop it the least a little bit, it's going to drop things. It's going to change the picture a great deal. A lot of times I'll do like a 0.2 or a 0.3 as a kind of as a boundary for what I'm going to do there. Now I feel like I've lost some of the contrast, but I can get that back in some of these other sliders without going directly to the contrast button. Now I'm going to go back to my blacks now. 35 and 40s, starting to look kind of the way I want it. I'm going to make this go to, I'm going to go -50. And then this, I will take this one down. And you can also use the arrow keys to adjust it step by step. So you kind of get where you want to be. So now I feel like we've got some depth. If you look at the histogram, you're kind of seeing a lot of, still a little in the high, some of the highs are missing, but I've got a kind of nice pattern through here. And so if I want to bring some of these up in this range here, I'm going to just kind of boost the highlights a little bit. And let's go 10. And I can also boost the whites. And maybe something like 10 again. I feel like I've got a pretty good histogram started. There's still kind of some missing on the high end, but overall it's looking pretty good. Next thing I'm going to do is drop down to these here, these settings down here. Clarity is another setting. It's going to distribute the highs and the lows a little more evenly and clarify the picture. Now I'm kind of getting to the point. I'm kind of liking the way this is starting to look in the histogram, and I like the contrast between the face and the ground. Dehaze is similar, and it's going to add a little more clarity to the picture. And so you can also tab from. You can use the tab key to move from setting to setting. Vibrance, we're familiar. Most people are familiar with vibrance and saturation. Vibrance is going to make those colors pop a little bit more, and saturation very quickly will make the picture just fill in as if I always think of saturation as how much ink is coming out of the ink printer, even though it's not necessarily ink. Generally, I find that subtle changes in saturation are enough for my taste. This is another way of doing the tone curve thing. You can experiment with this. As a rule, on a photograph that starts off decent to start with, or unless I'm trying to do something particularly special effect, I don't use this. Sharpening, again, this is kind of a personal preference thing. I generally like a little bit of sharpening, and I will bring that usually up to around the 30 point, and that's just to clarify a little bit some of the boundaries and things like that. Noise reduction, in a good photograph you don't really need noise reduction, but if it's a low light photograph and you may have had to use a higher shutter speed. For example, I shot a gymnastics meet last year, and the lighting was really bad to start with, and I was trying to freeze the action. So I ended up with a lot of low light, high ISO artifacts. The luminescence and color noise reduction will go in, and it'll do a pretty good job of saying, well, all these around here are not purple, and then this guy's purple, so it's probably not supposed to be there. A lot of the times those low light artifacts are purple, so the noise and luminescence will knock that out. Another is the hue and saturation adjustments, and you can adjust luminance, you can adjust saturation, and you can adjust hue. These are, again, for me, these are like special case when I'm trying to go for a special effect, or when I want, I had something really broken to start with. But you can go through and you can change the amount of just how much saturation for just one of the colors, and changing. So I'm going to set these back to 0 because I think I had a good picture to start with. Again, you can tab through the settings, and the next is tone splitting. You can change the highlights and the shadows, and these is a little bit like color wheels. Then we have some lens correction things. If you have fringing, you can get rid of some of that. Also, if you have problems with distortion and other lens things. Next is special effects. Let's come back to this in just a second. Here we also have calibration. This is, you can set your colors precisely the way you want them to be. And then here are all the settings on one screen. Let's go back to special effects. The post-crop vignetting, this is, to me, is not the best vignette tool I've ever used, but it works really well to bring some vignetting in. You can move the size of it around. One way to get this to work is to go all the way to the max, and then turn feathering down to 0. And now you can see exactly the size that you're dealing with, and you can get that size where you want it. One thing you cannot do is move the midpoint. And so let's say if this is the amount of vignetting that I wanted. Now I'll go back to my slider and make it reasonable. How much do I want it to lose? And then obviously feathering, how soft do I want the thing to be? Once I have the picture looking the way I want it to look, I'm going to hit the OK button, and it is going to take me back to my normal Photoshop interface, and apply this to whatever layer was active. And so I'm at the OK button. And so now it has applied those changes to the layer. So if I go back to my history, this is before and after. And so in sum, the camera raw filter is a very easy and quick way. Perhaps using only 2 or 3 of the tabs for a good picture to start with, you can adjust the color, the depth, the strength of the blacks and the whites. You can adjust those things there. You can work with the saturation and the vibrance, and then you can sharpen it a little bit and throw a little vignette on it, and very quickly you have gone from a decent picture to a picture that is far better. So hopefully this was a helpful tutorial. If you've been using the camera raw filter and you have some comments or things to add, please leave those down in the comments. Let me know what you think. If you have questions, I'd be happy to try and answer them for you. Thank you for watching again. If you enjoyed this, please subscribe to the channel. I do occasionally do tutorials, generally in the photography, videography range. Also have motivational inspiration videos, so you can check those out. Hit the like button. That's all I got for this video, so I will see you in the next one.